I spent 3 years of my life building a community art project on the ashes of my late father's workshop. It was his legacy, and it was my soul. My sister waited until the day of the unveiling to announce that her company had bought it, bulldozed my work, and replaced it with a soulless corporate monument bearing her name. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled, took a few pictures, and waited 3 weeks. Then, with a single, perfectly legal document that I'd been holding onto for a decade, I dismantled her entire career. And the phone calls that followed, they were spectacular. This wasn't just a simple case of sibling rivalry. This wasn't about who got the bigger slice of cake at birthday parties, or who Mom loved more. This was about erasure. A deliberate, calculated, and public act of wiping my existence and my father's memory off the map of the only town I've ever called home. And it all started with a promise I made to a dying man. A promise my sister Amelia never forgave me for. Our town, Oakhaven, isn't big. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your business, but they're usually kind enough to pretend they don't. At its heart was my dad's old woodworking studio, a beautiful ramshackle building that smelled of sawdust and turpentine. It was my favorite place on earth. After a fire took the building, and a piece of all of us, the lot sat empty for years, a scar on the face of our town. Dad's dream had been to turn it into a public space, a small park with benches he'd make himself, a place for people to just be. He never got the chance. On his deathbed, he made me promise I'd do something beautiful with that land. Not for me, Chloe, he'd whispered, his hand frail in mine. For them. For Oakhaven. I took that promise and poured my life into it. I'm a mosaic artist. It's not a lucrative career, and it's certainly not one my mother or Amelia ever understood. To them, my life was a charming, but ultimately pointless hobby. Amelia was the real success story. Senior VP at a massive tech conglomerate, Sterling Corp. She lived in a high-rise apartment in the city, wore clothes that cost more than my monthly mortgage, and spoke a language of acquisitions and mergers that was completely foreign to me. Our mother adored her. Amelia was proof that one of her children, at least, had turned out right. For 3 years, I worked on the Oakhaven Heartwood. That's what I called it. It was a massive, sprawling mosaic wall built on the foundation of the old studio. Every tile was donated or handmade. I taught workshops and kids, grandparents, the town cynic, the new family from California. They all came. They brought broken pieces of their lives. A grandmother's china plate, a child's favorite marble, a shard of sea glass from a first date. We broke them down, and piece by piece, fit them together. It was a tapestry of our town's stories, our shared history cemented into something beautiful. I funded it through small grants, local bake sales, and my own meager savings. It was slow, back-breaking work. But when the sun hit it just right, the wall shimmered with 1,000 different memories. It was alive, and it was almost finished. The town council loved it. The local paper had written a small, glowing article. We'd set a date for the official unveiling. I was so proud. I thought, maybe this time, my family would finally see. Maybe they'd understand that success isn't always measured in stock options. I called Amelia, my voice buzzing with excitement, and invited her and Mom to the ceremony. Of course, sweetie, she'd said, her voice smooth as glass. Wouldn't miss it for the world. In fact, I might have a little surprise for you, too. I should have known. With Amelia, surprises were never gifts. They were Trojan horses. The week before the unveiling, I started to feel a weird shift. The friendly town council members suddenly became vague and hard to reach. The permit office, which had been so helpful, was now drowning me in bureaucratic red tape about public safety compliance. I chalked it up to small-town inefficiency. I was so focused on the final details, grouting the last section, polishing the tiles, planning the small reception with cookies and lemonade, that I didn't see the storm gathering on the horizon. My boyfriend, Liam, a carpenter who had built the frame for the wall, felt it too. "Something's off, Chloe," he'd said, wiping sawdust from his brow. "These people are acting like they've seen a ghost." I waved it off. "They're just nervous," I'd said, an idiot full of naive optimism. It's a big day for everyone. I had no idea how big. The day of the unveiling was bright and cold. A perfect autumn afternoon. People started gathering on the lot, their faces full of anticipation. They were pointing out their tiles to their families, sharing the stories behind them. Mrs. Gable's blue tile from her husband's favorite vase. Little Timmy's red one from his first toy truck. It was everything Dad would have wanted. I felt him there with me, a warm presence at my back. Then a fleet of black cars pulled up. Sleek, silent, and utterly out of place in Oakhaven. Out stepped my sister, Amelia. She wasn't dressed for a small-town art unveiling. She was wearing a razor-sharp power suit, flanked by two men in identical gray suits. My mother was with her, looking flustered but beaming with pride. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. Before I could even say hello, one of Amelia's assistants was directing the crowd towards a covered easel and a small podium that hadn't been there an hour ago. A banner was unfurled. It read, "Sterling Corp. and the town of Oakhaven present. The Sterling Gateway Plaza." I just stared. Sterling Gateway Plaza? What was happening? Amelia took the podium, a dazzling predatory smile on her face. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice amplified by a microphone. "As a daughter of Oakhaven, it has always been my dream to give back to the community that raised me." She went on, talking about corporate responsibility and urban renewal. She announced that her company, Sterling Corp., had made a generous 7-figure donation to the town, and in partnership with the council, they were fast-tracking the development of this very lot into a state-of-the-art public plaza. Then she gestured to the easel. Her assistant pulled away the cloth. It was a digital rendering. A cold, sterile space of polished concrete, minimalist metal benches, and a single, enormous brushed steel sculpture in the shape of the Sterling Corp logo. There was no color, no warmth, no life. And my mosaic wall, it was just gone, replaced by a smooth gray retaining wall with a small bronze plaque. "We want to thank my sister, Chloe," Amelia said, gesturing to me with a perfectly manicured hand. The crowd turned to look at me, their faces a mixture of confusion and pity. Her charming rustic project served as the initial inspiration for this far grander vision. Her passion proved that this space was worth investing in, and for that, we are all grateful. Initial inspiration. The words hit me like a physical blow. She had used me. She had used my work, my sweat, my father's dying wish, as a proof of concept for her corporate takeover. I looked at the faces in the crowd. My neighbors, my friends, the people who had poured their hearts onto that wall. Their confusion was turning to a quiet, simmering anger. I saw Mrs. Gable clutching her purse, her knuckles white. I saw Liam, standing by the edge of the lot, his face like thunder. But I didn't move. I just stood there, a faint, polite smile frozen on my face. My mother caught my eye and gave me a little, "Isn't this wonderful?" shrug. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't a surprise. This was an execution. They had sold my father's soul to the highest bidder, and my sister was holding the receipt. I didn't say a word. I just raised my phone, snapped a clear photo of the digital rendering, the banner, and Amelia's triumphant smile. Then I turned and walked away, the sound of polite, confused applause fading behind me. The war hadn't just begun. It had been won and lost, without me even knowing I was on the battlefield. But they had made one critical mistake. They assumed the war was over. For the next 3 days, I didn't leave my house. My phone blew up. Liam, my friends, confused townspeople, they all called. I ignored them. Then came the calls from my mother. Her tone was bright, breezy, and utterly clueless. "Chloe, honey, why did you run off?" Amelia was so disappointed. We were all going to go for a celebratory dinner. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts. "You're being so dramatic. Amelia did this for the town, and for you, really. Now you'll have time for a real job. You should be grateful." Grateful. That was the word that broke through the numbness. Grateful that my sister had systematically dismantled the most meaningful thing I had ever created. Grateful that she had stood on a podium and called 3 years of my life charming, rustic inspiration. It was like thanking an arsonist for the warmth of the fire as it burns your house down. Liam came over on the 3rd night. He didn't push or pry. He just sat with me in the quiet darkness of my living room, the faint smell of grout and dust still clinging to my clothes. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked. I looked at him, and for the first time in 72 hours, I felt something other than a hollow ache. I felt a cold, clear resolve. "I'm going to my studio," I said. "My studio isn't just a workspace. It's an archive. It holds every sketch, every grant application, every email and letter related to the Heartwood project. But it also holds memories from another lifetime. Deeper, darker ones." I pulled out a heavy fireproof lockbox from the back of a dusty closet. Inside, nestled amongst old photos of my dad, was a slim file folder. It was 10 years old. Inside was a sworn affidavit, a handful of damning emails I had printed out, and a draft of a resignation letter. All of it signed not by me, but by a man named Daniel Martinez. And all of it related to something called Project Nightingale. Project Nightingale was Amelia's first major success at Sterling Corp. It was the project that got her promoted to junior VP. It was a revolutionary piece of software that, according to the press releases, she had designed from the ground up. The only problem was, she hadn't. Daniel Martinez, a brilliant but unassuming coder on her team, had. I knew this because a decade ago, a desperate, sobbing Amelia had shown up on my doorstep in the middle of the night. She'd been caught. Daniel had found out she'd stolen his code, bypassed his credentials, and presented his work as her own. He was going to HR. He was going to ruin her. And what did I do? I helped her. I was the easygoing artistic sister, the peacemaker. I met with Daniel. I listened to his story. I validated his anger. And then I appealed to his kindness. I talked about our family, about how a scandal would destroy our mother. I spun a tale of a desperate mistake, not malicious theft. I convinced him to sign a non-disclosure agreement and take a generous severance package in exchange for his silence. I told Amelia I was doing it for Mom, but really, I was doing it because she was my sister. And I thought that's what sisters did. I had saved her career, and in return, I kept one copy of the evidence. Not as blackmail, as insurance. A reminder, mostly to myself, that I had a sister capable of doing anything to get what she wanted. I had buried it, hoping I would never have to look at it again. But as I sat there, the cold metal of the lockbox on my lap, I realized she hadn't just erased my mosaic. She had erased the memory of the one time I had saved her. She had mistaken my loyalty for weakness. She assumed the statute of limitations on my silence had expired. So, I scanned the documents. Every single one. I composed a new email, attached the files, and wrote a simple 2-sentence message. I addressed it to the chairman of the board at Sterling Corp, a man I knew she feared, and CC'd the entire executive committee and the head of their internal ethics department. But I didn't send it. Not yet. First, I sent a single screenshot of that email draft to Amelia. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained only one sentence. I believe you have something that belongs to the people of Oakhaven. I hit send, shut my laptop, and went to bed. For the first time in a week, I slept soundly. To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you have to understand my family's fault lines. They were drawn long before I was born. A map of alliances and resentments I had to learn to navigate as a child. My father was an artist, a dreamer. He saw beauty in the grain of a piece of wood, in the way light fell across an unfinished canvas. My mother saw a man who was chronically late on bills and who tracked sawdust into her impeccably clean house. She loved him, I think, but she never respected him. Amelia was my mother's child, practical, ambitious, with a deep-seated fear of not having enough. She saw our father's art as a charming but irresponsible indulgence. I was my father's daughter. I saw magic. He taught me how to see, how to mix colors, how to find the story in a discarded object. Our afternoons in his workshop were my sanctuary. Amelia rarely joined us. She'd be inside, diligently doing her homework at the kitchen table, earning our mother's quiet approval. I was Chloe, the creative one. She was Amelia, the smart one. The labels stuck. They became our roles, our destinies. It wasn't malicious, not at first. It was just the way things were. They were proud of my little art projects in the way you're proud of a dog for learning a new trick. It was cute. It was a novelty. But Amelia's straight-A report cards, her debate team trophies, her acceptance into an Ivy League business school, that was real. That was currency. That was something my mother could brag about to her friends. When Dad got sick, the dynamic shifted from passive to active. His illness was long and expensive. Amelia, already climbing the corporate ladder, would swoop in from the city for weekends, her checkbook open. She paid for nurses, for experimental treatments. She was organized, efficient, and in control. My mother saw her as a savior. I was the one who was there every day. I held his hand, read to him, helped him sketch when his hands were shaking too badly to hold a piece of wood. I was the one who listened to his fears and his dreams for the empty lot where his studio used to be. Amelia paid the bills. I paid with my time, my heart. In our family's ledger, her contribution was tangible, quantifiable. Mine was not. After he passed, the first major battle was over the workshop land. The fire had happened years before his death, but he'd never had the heart or the money to rebuild. Amelia and my mother wanted to sell it immediately. "It's what's practical, Chloe," my mother had said, as if practicality were the highest virtue. "The property taxes are a burden. We could use the money." Amelia had already scouted developers. She talked about turning it into a parking lot for the downtown businesses. A parking lot. The thought made me physically ill. I fought them. For the first time in my life, I refused to be the easygoing, agreeable one. I reminded them of Dad's promise. I argued that the land was his only real legacy. It was an ugly, drawn-out fight that lasted for months. They saw me as emotional, irrational. "You're clinging to the past," Amelia had accused me during one tearful phone call. "Dad is gone. A plot of dirt won't bring him back." But it wasn't just a plot of dirt. It was a promise. In the end, I wore them down. They reluctantly agreed to let me have a go at my little community project, as my mother called it, with the condescending air of an adult letting a child keep a stray puppy. But there was a condition. A quiet, unwritten one. It was my project. So, it was my problem. They offered no help, no money, and certainly no encouragement. For 3 years, they watched from a distance. Their silence, a constant, low-grade judgment. I think they were just waiting for me to fail. Waiting for me to give up, so they could finally call the developers and be done with it. When the project started to succeed, when the town embraced it, I don't think they felt pride. I think they felt cheated. And the incident with Daniel Martinez. Looking back, I see it so clearly now. When Amelia came to me, broken and terrified, I didn't just see my sister. I saw a chance to finally be the one who was strong, the one who could fix things. I saw an opportunity to balance the scales. She was the successful one, the one who had it all together. But in that moment, she needed me. My quiet, non-corporate skills, listening, empathizing, appealing to people's better nature, were suddenly more valuable than her MBA. When I solved her problem, when I made Daniel Martinez disappear from her life, there was a flicker of something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Respect. It vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Within a month, she was back to being the magnanimous older sister, occasionally offering to buy me a real dinner, because she knew money must be tight. She never spoke of it again. But I see now that she didn't just bury the memory. She resented me for it. I was a witness to her greatest weakness. And my mosaic, my beautiful, thriving tribute to the father she could never quite understand, was a public monument to a part of our family. She wanted to forget. She didn't just want the land. She wanted to bulldoze the last piece of my father's world and the last person who truly remembered it. Me. The call came at 6:17 a.m. I had been awake for an hour, watching the sun rise, my phone sitting silently on the kitchen counter. When it rang, displaying Amelia's name, I let it go to the third ring before answering. I didn't say anything. I just waited. The silence stretched, thick and charged. "What is this?" Her voice was a low hiss, stripped of its usual corporate polish. It was the raw, panicked voice I remembered from 10 years ago. "I think you know what it is," I said, my tone calm, almost conversational. "This is blackmail, Chloe." "No," I corrected her gently. "Blackmail is when you ask for money. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for my wall back. Or rather, the town's wall." There was a sharp, incredulous laugh on the other end. "You're insane. You think you can threaten me over some arts and crafts project?" "I'm not threatening you, Amelia. I'm presenting you with a choice. You can either be the corporate hero who graciously corrects a contractor's error and restores a beloved community landmark, or you can be the subject of a career-ending ethics investigation. The story is quite compelling. Golden Girl VP built her career on stolen code. I think the tech blocks would have a field day with that." I could hear her breathing, ragged and fast. She was pacing. I could picture her in her sterile white apartment, the city lights twinkling behind her, her whole perfect world tilting on its axis. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "You'd destroy Mom. You'd destroy this family." "You already took care of that," I said, and the coldness in my own voice surprised me. "You did it when you stood on that podium and spit on Dad's memory. You did it when you put a price tag on our neighbors' stories and sold them to your company. This family you're so worried about? It's a fiction you tell yourself to sleep at night." I'm just pulling back the curtain. "I will ruin you," she seethed. "I will sue you for slander, for extortion." "Go ahead," I said, and I almost smiled. "Let's have that legal battle. Let's get Daniel Martinez on the stand. Let's go through 10 years of your emails. My lawyer is a pro bono guy from the Arts Council who mostly handles landlord disputes. Your lawyers cost $2,000 an hour. Let's see who cracks first." The line went dead silent. The bluster, the rage, it had all evaporated, leaving behind the cold, hard calculus of risk assessment. She was a VP. She knew how this worked. A messy public fight, even one she might eventually win, would taint her forever. The mere accusation was enough. Sterling Corp was a publicly traded company. They didn't tolerate scandal among their top executives. "What do you want?" she finally asked, her voice small, defeated. "It's very simple." I laid it out, my voice devoid of emotion. 1. You will issue a public press release by noon tomorrow. It will state that the announcement of the Sterling Gateway Plaza was premature, and that Sterling Corp, after community consultation, has decided to fully fund the completion and future maintenance of the original Oakhaven Heartwood mosaic, as a testament to your company's commitment to authentic local culture. 2. You will personally call Mrs. Gable and apologize for the distress you caused her. 3. You will transfer a sum of $50,000 from your personal account to the Oakhaven Arts Council. Consider it a non-anonymous donation. And 4. You will never ever speak to me again unless I speak to you first. $50,000? She choked out. That's what your pride is worth today, I said. It's a bargain. The price goes up tomorrow. I waited. I could hear the gears turning, the cost-benefit analysis running through her head. Losing face versus losing everything. Humiliation versus annihilation. Fine, she finally bit out, the words sounding like broken glass. I'll be waiting for the press release, I said. And then I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, hollow emptiness. I had won. But I had lost my sister a long, long time ago. The phone call just made it official. The aftermath was strange. The fallout didn't come as a massive explosion, but as a series of quiet, seismic shifts. At 11:45 a.m. the next day, just as promised, the press release hit the local newswire. It was a masterpiece of corporate spin. Words like miscommunication, reevaluation, and deepening our community partnership were used liberally. Amelia was quoted as saying, "True progress means listening." After hearing from the heart of Oakhaven, we realized the most valuable contribution we can make is to preserve the authentic vision that my sister, Chloe, so brilliantly brought to life. It was nauseatingly perfect. She'd even managed to make her retreat sound noble. The town's reaction was mixed. Most people were just relieved. Mrs. Gable called me, crying with joy, saying Amelia had been so sweet on the phone. Others were more suspicious. They'd seen the black cars, the smug press conference. They knew a battle had been fought, and won, even if they didn't know the details. I became a reluctant local hero, a David who had somehow, inexplicably, beaten Goliath. People would stop me in the grocery store and give me a knowing nod, a thumbs up. They saw the result, not the weapon I had used. The deconstruction of the Sterling Gateway Plaza began within a week. The sterile concrete blocks were torn out. The brushed steel logo was hauled away on a flatbed truck, looking like a piece of alien wreckage. Liam and a crew of volunteers, their faith restored, worked tirelessly to rebuild the framework for my mosaic. The saved sections of the wall were carefully brought out of storage, but something was different. The joy was gone. The work felt less like a creation and more like a repair. The innocence of the project was lost forever, a scar hidden beneath the new layer of grout. My mother called me, her voice trembling with a rage she was trying to mask with disappointment. "I don't know what you did, Chloe," she said, "but you have humiliated your sister. You have humiliated this family." "Amelia humiliated herself," I replied, my voice flat. "And Dad, your father would be ashamed of you, using his memory to be so vengeful." That's when something inside me finally snapped. "No, Mom," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "Dad would be ashamed of you for standing there smiling while his legacy was being paved over for a corporate logo. He would have been heartbroken that you valued Amelia's checkbook more than his dream. You didn't just let her do it. You cheered her on. So don't you dare tell me what my father would have thought." I hung up before she could respond. We haven't spoken since. The most surprising consequence came from Amelia herself. The $50,000 appeared in the Arts Council's bank account. She kept her distance, but about a month later, a large flat package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a single, perfect handmade tile. It was a deep cobalt blue, the exact color of my father's eyes. Taped to the back was a small folded note. It just said, "For his workshop." I didn't know what to make of it. Was it an apology? A peace offering? Or just another calculated move? I haven't used it. It sits on my workbench, a silent, complicated question mark. The mosaic is finished now. It's beautiful. From a distance, you can't see the scars. You can't see the ghosts of the corporate rendering or the bitter fight that brought it back to life. But I see them. Every time I look at it, I feel a strange mix of pride and profound sadness. We saved it. But the cost was a family. Perhaps it was a family that was already broken beyond repair, and I just had the courage, or the cruelty, to finally sign the death certificate. The lines are blurred. I look at my hands, still stained with paint and grout, and I wonder if I'm a creator or a destroyer. Maybe in the end, you have to be a bit of both to survive. It's been almost a year. The Oak Haven Heartwood is now a landmark. Tourists come to see it. School groups take field trips. It does exactly what my dad wanted it to do. It brings people together, but the family it was born from is shattered. I have a functioning, if strained, relationship with my mother. It's built on a foundation of things unsaid, a carefully constructed peace treaty. We talk about the weather, about her garden, about anything other than Amelia. Amelia's career took a hit. Not a direct one, but the splashback from the Oak Haven incident, as it came to be known in quiet corporate circles, damaged her reputation. The story that leaked out wasn't about stolen code. It was about a ruthless executive who tried to bulldoze her own sister's community project for personal glory. It painted her as unstable, an unnecessary risk. She wasn't fired, but she was moved sideways, from a position of power to one of special projects. A gilded cage. I hear from a cousin that she's quieter now, less sure of herself. I don't know if I should feel vindicated by that. Mostly, I just feel tired. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this is that forgiveness is a tricky, often overrated concept. We're taught that it's the noble path, the sign of a bigger person. But sometimes, forgiveness isn't a gift you give to someone else. It's a demand they place on you to absolve them of their own toxicity. It's a free pass to do it again. I haven't forgiven Amelia. I don't know if I ever will, and I've had to make peace with that. My peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from boundaries. My peace is the silence on my phone. It's knowing that my art, my life, and my father's memory are no longer vulnerable to her ambition. Protecting your work, protecting your soul, isn't vengeance. It's survival. I had to become a person I never wanted to be. Cold, calculating, ruthless. To protect the person I am, I had to use a secret weapon from a decade ago to stop a fresh wound from festering. Did I handle it the right way? I honestly don't know. There was no clean, righteous path. There was just a choice between two kinds of devastation, hers or mine. And for the first time in my life, I chose mine. I chose to save myself. I chose my father's legacy, and I would do it again. So I'm leaving you with this question. When someone you love tries to systematically erase you, at what point does loyalty become self-destruction? When is it not just okay, but necessary, to fight back with the same fire they're using to burn you down? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And if you've ever felt like your story was being stolen, hit that subscribe button. Because this is a space where our stories, in all their messy, complicated glory, are safe.